epic dual storyline, scream like this, and a freaking samurai dog. What are you waiting for? I believe this has one of the best character party makeups on the PS1 and one of my favorite battle systems. Now that's saying a lot right there because the PS1 is a treasure trove of fantastic RPGs. But does Breath of Fire 4 hold out all the way through the experience? Or does it stumble in certain design decisions throughout the game? But most of all, is it worth your time to visit the final numbered game in the series that has been lost to time? Before we dive into the pixel-perfect, beautiful world of Breath of Fire 4 and answer all those questions, where does Breath of Fire 4 rank for you in the series as a whole? Or you could share a nice memory of this game below while we boot up our PS1s and find out if Breath of Fire 4 is worth your time. The first time I booted up Breath of Fire 4, I played for 3 hours straight, which to me is a good sign because a lot of RPGs struggle to capture my attention in those beginning hours. They're either too slow or don't have enough mystery off the bat to keep me motivated. Breath of Fire 4 hooked me immediately. Under the first hour, you get glimpses of 2 different stories already. You have that dual narrative coming at you. But I know for me, the only factor that drew me into wanting to play Breath of Fire 4 when I didn't know anything about the game was the art style. But it is a whole other beast to see it in motion for yourself. It's absolutely mind-boggling that they made this game work on the PS1. I immediately fell in love with the art style and the accompanying musical tracks. The beginning set the stage for something that felt different than what I was used to on the PS1, and that's exactly what I was looking for. I played on original hardware on my PS1 and on my CRT TV, both of these actually. It took me 34 hours and 2 minutes to find my way to the ending credits, which is a bit quicker than most people from the stats I've seen online. I was level 36 going into the final battle, and oh, what a battle it was. Can't we talk about that in the spoilers section? And I did 563 battles, which, holy moly, that's kind of a lot, and you could do a lot more if you spend more time with this game. My max hit combo was 18. I absolutely love the combo system, more on that in a bit. My max damage was 21,832, which is peanuts to some people's numbers I've seen online, but oh my gosh, was that fun to mess around with. I maxed out all 20 fairies, and my game points were 11,055, which is to say I didn't upgrade my dragon forms as much as I could have. What I do love about this, looking at my stats and seeing where I could improve for a second playthrough, is the option of that second playthrough isn't so daunting. You can make it through this game without spending 68 hours just to see the ending, so you can experience all these wonderful story moments that we'll talk about soon. You can spend more than 34 hours with it for sure, but I could see myself replaying this one easier than some other RPGs, so that's a nice touch. And if I were to do that, I would try and break that combo system and get my game points up more. As I said above, I played on my CRT on my original hardware, and I didn't have a capture card linked in or ways to gather any footage of my playthrough. And I knew I really wanted to talk about Breath of Fire 4. So I reached out to some YouTubers asking if I could use their footage so you're not just staring at the trailer on repeat or my pictures of my CRT screen. Savage Sage came to my rescue and was very excited about it too, which is awesome. They are really into Breath of Fire, which is a double whammy of goodness. They have playthroughs of every Breath of Fire 1 through 4. Someday I'll get back to Breath of Fire 3 right there. I appreciate that they say the dialogue and use voices all throughout their playthrough. That can be fun to go along with.
Whoa! Look at the size of that hole! That's what she said.
They also do some newer games like Mario and Luigi Brothership, Nine Souls as well. Make sure to show Savage Sage some love for being so nice and allow me to use their footage. I'll have all their links down in the description so you can go give them some love. A huge, huge thank you. Where our adventure begins is with the dual narrative that's being told. Two different characters with some sort of connection that we'll find as we progress. We're introduced to our party members Nina and Cray, but we find our first protagonist, which is Ryu, which I named Micah in my playthrough. Funny enough, my wife used that name much later for Tidus when she started playing Final Fantasy X. Life is funny and circular like that sometimes, maybe even so with this game. Now Nina finds a dragon in this crater that leaves behind a naked Ryu. Our main character Ryu does speak, but we never really see his dialogue pop up, and he doesn't seem to know where he's planning on going, so he uses a lot of non-verbals. So we do have the trope of the protagonist doesn't remember anything, which is a staple in a lot of RPGs, and somehow I still don't get tired of it, which is kind of weird, because if it's done with care, it works. And seeing this new person just laying out in the desert without knowing how or why they are there is kind of a cool start to an intriguing story. And this further ramps up very early because we get a peek at another protagonist bursting out of a temple. We get our first look at our other protagonist, Folu. The transition shot between Ryu and Nina in a cave to the ambient background noises before the reveal of this new character is nicely done with a lot of good direction. And if you go into the menu, you can tell this person is much, much stronger than our other party members. Level 64. I gotta love some N64 love right there. Can guarantee they did not plan on that. You have him waking up and there's no one there to greet him like he's some sort of god or something, and we get him using his powers right at the very beginning. He summons a dragon, and in a passage says that the dragon gave life to the people, so we already got some world building going on here. And we learn that he's the first emperor of the Fo Empire from the past. But things have changed, and now they're trying to kill him. Some cool dynamics from both sides, and this truly grabbed my attention, and we're not even an hour into the game at this point. So some fantastic hooks. Nina and Ryu's tale onset seems a little bit more tame in comparison. It's a simple task of finding ship parts to repair their sand vehicle. It's nice when you get into the first town, you hear people talking about a monster that caused a hole in the ground. Well, you found naked Ryu over there, so there's some trepidation whether things are going to go bad quickly. This first town is where you come across, I'd say, one of Breath of Fire 4's more controversial design decisions, and that is the camera. Pressing either L1 or R1, you rotate the camera to get different angles on any dungeon or town you're in. The towns are built upon this feature, where you have to be constantly changing the camera angles to be able to navigate your way through these towns with success. Now, what I do love about this design philosophy is that things are hidden when you enter certain shops, or even when you get out to a different elevation. You're incentivized to be manipulating the camera, not just to navigate, but also to search for treasure chests or characters that are blocked off from the environment, so you can talk to them and proceed on with your quest. I can see where this could get annoying for some people, but honestly, I kind of like the control aspect, rather than being forced into static camera angles every single time. Now, if this is annoying for you in the beginning of the game, it does not get better as the game progresses. Every town and city is built like this, but this also is not limited to the towns either. All your dungeons and outside fields you'll be exploring will be utilizing this camera movement. Now, this technically isn't a new thing. A lot of RPGs do this, but the way they design specifically the game around this, where things are kind of cut off and blocked from your view until you switch the camera, is a little bit different, and it takes a little tinkering to get used to it and kind of just know that that is the way this game is going to work. And with that makes the dungeons be a little bit odd with this camera. You get a lot of blackness on the screen when going through small passages or narrow corridors, which happens a lot of the time in dungeons. So it can kind of feel odd being in this floating hallway and navigating the camera only to see more blackness surrounding you. I'm not sure why they chose this instead of just extending those backgrounds further out, but I commend the developers for going all in on this design decision, for better or worse. It does have the effect of slowing down the game when you're constantly switching the camera angles, but I still think it gives off more of a unique feeling than a dampening one. Sticking on the thought of dungeons for another moment, there's the dreaded backtracking. Yes, you'll be going back through the dungeons a lot of times, even after you beat the boss of the dungeon. This can be a drag. But what makes it not a drag sometimes is the variety of the dungeons. Most of the dungeons have a gimmick or mechanic within them. They go beyond the usual tropes of locations or with elements within the dungeons themselves. So even if you have similar looking corridors and sometimes the dungeons look similar, where you're manipulating the camera to find the treasure chest within, you still have this other aspect. For instance, there's a dungeon that utilizes the element of wind in this more vertical cave layout. The cave might look similar to other dungeons you've been in before, but you have these various wind turbines to navigate. Then you have to also time your jumps to fly yourself up to other platforms, which is actually as awesome as it sounds. This was a solid dungeon design. These unique features change up the flow constantly. Some mechanics I like, some I don't, but at least there's a variety to spice up exploring while smashing those L1 and R1 buttons. Now, it wouldn't be a fun adventure if the cast of characters weren't fun to be around. And these characters are so freaking fun to look at, and they're fun to be around. The character designer of this game needs to be commended, just as much as the animators. This cast of characters are vibrant, silly, awesome, and everything in between. Let's start off with Sias, the mercenary dog. Look at this design. One is a standing up dog holding a sword. That's freaking awesome. But the brilliant green robe, the hair covering the eyes, an absolute masterclass in design. They're cool and goofy at the same time. This one is assigned to protect us, and, well, they don't talk much and they kind of stutter through their speech. It's an interesting character choice. Our main protagonist, though another could be considered the actual main character, we'll talk about that in a bit. Ryu, Micah, is the silent-ish one that sort of lets the group take charge, even though he's the most powerful one able to turn into a dragon form. I love that he just kind of plops down and interrupts Nina and Kray's quest, and they're constantly bickering and wanting to help him figure out what's going on. He's rather one note since we get his dialogue through other characters, but he still has growth, especially towards the end of the game. The striking blue hair, the martial artist clothing style, his design just pops. The one you could say is the true leader of the group is such a fun design. Nina's wings and the color choices of blonde hair and blue shirt and boots. She's so caring and willing to work with for the benefits of others. It's a usual good-hearted girl scenario, but she really throws herself into each task. She has some funny quips and dialogue and wants to do everything to help Ryu find where he belongs, which is one of the main driving forces to the beginning of the story, paired with trying to find her missing sister. And that missing sister is a princess, and she's the younger one to her older sister, which is a trope, of course, in these games, but I like her quite a bit. The beginning of the game also introduces you to Kray, who might be my least favorite character of the bunch, but that doesn't mean he's bad. He's got a cool design, olive skin, and this tiger-like tail. What I really like about the design of these characters and the world in general, there's all these anthropomorphic... I cannot say that word right now. There's a bunch of characters that look like animals, but they're talking and walking around. His main motivation is he's looking for Nina's missing sister, and he's kind of Nina's bodyguard. He will do almost anything to find the missing sister, even willing to give up Ryu to the Empire if it helps him. So at least that makes him kind of unique in the dynamic. He also has this cool heritage with his tribe, but he hasn't changed too much throughout most of the game, but he's at least somewhat interesting in certain situations that the group gets into, which is nice. Oh, Urshan. Good old Urshan. My favorite character. Man, I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite and win this group, but you have so many great characters in your party. Basically, it's a talking suit of armor that joins up with your team. Urshan is one of the strangest / coolest characters in a JRPG that I've experienced. They have this great zoom in on their portrait when they say something ridiculous and funny. They have this strange laugh and dialogue, and they have a freaking hilarious scene where you're in this forest and something's kind of bugging you, but it's invisible. So Urshan just turns and headbutts the air, and they headbutt a freaking fairy out of nowhere. And I literally laughed out loud. Oh, it's so good. They also go through some definite changes to their character as a whole that puts on a whole new perspective. This is a little bit later in the game, but it adds another layer to their dynamic to make this a really cool character. My little trash can looking entity with legs and arms will forever be in my heart. Ursula's motivations are simple. Bring the dragon back, and we'll leave it at that for now. I really love her design with the purple outfit and the longer ears, plus she uses a gun, which is a standout in this cast of characters. She's strong and capable, and she's a bit later in the party, so not as much development going on, but there's enough to make her interesting. She has this line about not being afraid of ghosts or rats, but that dang sea lice gets to her nerves, which is gross. Yeah! And of course we have the other side with Fulu. Fulu's dynamic is interesting on him being hunted and then dealing with the weakness, being a little bit weaker than what he expected when he awakens. He single-handedly united the Fu Empire hundreds of years ago, and now his people are betraying him, and just having that emotional struggle for him is really interesting to see it kind of play out. And there's this kind of wonderful, almost Beauty and the Beast type scenario when he meets this villager later on. There's a lot of story building stuff that goes into the connection between Ryu and him, but we'll get to that in due time. Design-wise, just look at those cast characters. They're wonderful. Now, there are more than just those party members. You have recurring NPCs and enemies that will definitely keep you entertained as you make your way through this varied and interesting world. And of course, what comes with exploring the world is killing a bunch of monsters. And you'll be battling at least over 500 times if you're like me, possibly even more. Thankfully, it looks gorgeous and it has a standout battle formation system that is so freaking fun to mess around with. Alright, let's get this out of the way. Random encounters. Yep, they're here. That in itself I know will turn people away, but oh boy are you missing out on a turn-based battle system that is absolutely stellar, while not being overly complicated, but complex enough to give your brain some work. There is something to help alleviate the random encounters, and that is every character has this charge option, which is the characters just auto-attack until you press the triangle button to stop it. It's not totally auto-battle levels, but it helps save some time if you're not looking to use skills or combos, which we'll get into that. Besides the combos being fun to utilize, they are a freaking feast for the eyes. A simple attack animation had me gawking when I first booted this up. Just Ryu going up from his battle stance to slice an enemy was so smooth. I was like, what is this game? And it only gets better from there. There are some absolute tasty animations with some of these moves. It's insane how well the art direction and the coolness factor of transforming into dragon forms just makes it an absolute blast. And it just really goes into the soul for me. I wanted to see some of these longer animations in most cases because it was just a spectacle unfolding for me on screen. Now it's a simple 3-party member setup with your attacks, your defense, your skills, your magic, and whatnot. But the beauty is being able to switch out characters on the fly before each turn. But what makes that even better is that your characters that are in reserve are still on the battle screen in what's called the rear rank. Now when your characters are in the rear rank instead of the front, they can recover their health, their AP, which is determined by the CP stat, which can be boosted with a mastery system, which we'll talk about shortly. That's super neat. So they're recovering their health, they're recovering their magic, and even most status effects can be cured if they are in the rear rank for 3 turns. This is such a simple but wonderful way to use more of your abilities, knowing you can recover them in battle without having to use items. So from that simple formation, there's a lot of strategy that goes in. What's even cooler is the extra use of the guard feature, your normal defense. Obviously, it will reduce the damage that's coming in on you. But it also lets you learn an enemy skill if you're attacked while guarding. When you hover over enemies with your cursor, a certain word might be highlighted in a different color text, and you know that enemy might use that certain attack that you can then learn. Plus, it gives you almost a hint what this enemy type might do. It's really cool stuff. But these enemies have these awesome idle animations as well. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I can stare at these for such a long time. The attention to detail of the battles is amazing. The wind effects from powering up to how these enemies bounce around looking docile or maybe a little bit more menacing. But going back to those skills, all those skills that you learn can be swapped around to different characters. So if you're going for a certain build or combo synergy, we'll get to that in a moment, you can give away certain elements and skills to other characters. There's some barriers to freely doing this all the time. You have to use an item called Arum to equip the skills, but it's a super cool system where the magic and skills are kind of like armor and weapons that you can freely switch around between party members. Where this really sets in and the strategy starts brewing is the combo system. When you do certain attacks in a certain order, you create a combo move that changes the attacks and increases the damage. There's 3 types, using a magic spell elements in a certain order, like fire to wind to water to earth. That will create a mixed combo that looks just freaking awesome, and you get the nice combo meter counting up. Then another version is the successive combo, which is using abilities of the same attributes will then have a greater effect. You have to keep in mind character speed and when they will attack to make sure you're synergizing them correctly. And the last one is the additional combo. When using a magic or physical attribute skill after a magic one that causes a status effect, the second magic skill then will get an additional effect of that abnormal status. So you can see the potential for the amount of synergy you can do between characters, and knowing that you have an entire party at your disposal, recovering their AP and the rear rank ready to help out. It can make the combat system so much fun. And while you're having fun with the strategies, you're looking at these beautiful animations, the brilliant sprite work, and I just can't get over how smooth and beautiful it all is. And it's more than just beautiful, it's just awesome. Yes, we have our two characters that can turn into a dragon form. That changes their attacks, their attack sets, and they're also able to summon a dragon to do some massive damage. This also has a different twist on what skills you want to use and how to approach the battles, because when you're in these transformed states, when you run out of AP, Ryu will be taken out of his dragon form state. So the bigger the moves, the more AP you'll be using. So there's a strategy in wondering, where should I be using my bigger moves? As your AP ticks down each turn, do I want to be just attacking quickly? There's a lot of strategy there, and it's just this nice, awesome, well, you transform, and it's just super cool every single time. Now all that is a lot, but what makes it a bit more complicated, but also really cool, is the Masters system. Around the world, you'll find these certain NPCs that you can study under. And when you study under them, they will have different attributes that are gained when you level up. For instance, you might get a bonus boost to your HP every single time you level up if you're a pupil under that certain master, but you'll get -1 to your AP stat. Or on a different master, you'll lose 8 health points, but gain 2 to your speed stat. So you can customize your base stats through the masters that you're studying under. On top of that, each master teaches different skills. So as you progress and do different tasks for that master, you learn different skills under them. There's also the master's will. Oh my gosh. This helps that rank system even more. So there are things that will occur during battle if you follow a certain master. It has a chance to occur, at least. For example, the characters in the rear row fall asleep, but recover 10% of their HP and AP guaranteed. So it's a lot bigger percentage in number. Or a master's will be a character will come out and protect an injured character so they don't get wiped out by a strong move from a boss. It's such a nice touch to an already brilliant battle system. Plus, finding these various NPCs out in the world and doing their tasks to find out how they will help you in battle, and being able to freely switch between master to master and you're not locked into any choice is just superb. I love this kind of stuff in my RPGs, and the way you can build these characters is so much fun. So at its base, it is a turn-based combat system with a front and rear rank, but oh so much more. And there's a lot more in this game, so let's keep going. There's a lot to do in the world of Breath of Fire 4. There, of course, are minigames to go about. Now, when I say minigames, it's kind of a blend between an actual minigame that you would do and more so a random task that they throw at you, either in town or getting to certain areas to progress the story. An example of these distractions and mandatory minigames would be an early one where you had to find NPCs in a game of hide and seek around the town, or one that confused me was riding this creature out into the Golden Desert and trying to find this woman in a hut. I have a feeling a decent amount of people may have gotten stuck at this point in time. It's very obtuse with its directions. Visually, it's really cool with some nice tunes in the background, but honestly, it's a little too vague in my opinion, so it's kind of badly designed. And you'll have instances of this all throughout the game. Some of them I really like the raft minigame really is a lot of fun. There's a point in the story where you have to drive this sand vehicle and race across a desert, and it doesn't get any more random and cool than that. It freaking actually clocks your time, and somehow the little race feels good. They really got the drifting down in that segment. Final Fantasy VII had a lot of minigames, and if these scenarios or these minigame-like things make you groan, you may want to look elsewhere. Some of them seem like time wasters, but honestly, I like the departure and shaking up the flow of getting from town to dungeon to town and just moving along. I usually do in most RPGs, but that comes down to personal taste. These are just little tiny barriers / little experiences that you have to do to find your way throughout the world. and I think it adds a little bit more of a fun flavor to this world rather than it being a negative in my eyes. And you'll be exploring this world one dotted line at a time. They have this interesting mechanic while crossing the terrain on the world map. You can enter a camp mode as well as interact with these question marks that pop up on the world map. Let's take a look at the latter first. When you investigate the question marks above your head, you go into a terrain area where you may find a hidden route, some secret items, and as well as battling enemies, and maybe even some fairies along the way. So it's nice to know you can grind whenever you feel like and grab more of those skills from guarding. Going into the camps, you see your character sprawled around a campfire and or hiding inside the tent. You get that Chrono Trigger bonfire moment whenever you like, which is awesome. This gives you time to see some dialogue options from characters. These range from a character just pointing you in the right direction to progress the story, to little tidbits after a major scene that happens to see what certain characters are feeling. I recommend going into camp as much as you can to talk to your party members, because this is where some of those subtle character developments come along, and I really like that. It makes you more feel a part of a cohesive unit. And of course, in the camps, you can rest, save your game, and mess around with your skills and which master you are studying under. This is also how you recover the HP of your dragons you summon, so that's cool. Along your journey, you'll find some unique-looking vistas and towns to explore. A few examples of my favorite areas that you go to is when you make it to this teleporter. It has this nice Eastern Asian-inspired shrine structures. You take this lift up and down. It's really nice. I do love the look anytime you go into a forest because the lush greens just really pop. A castle town has this nice, almost industrial feel to it. But one of my favorites is Windia. It has this great 2-level layout structure. On the bottom level is this colorful Eastern European vibe to the structures. And then the top level, you're up in the clouds almost, and you're looking down at the town, and there's a castle built on top of it. And on both levels, there's just windmills just doing their thing, and it's just a beautiful sight to see. Now, we talked about the intro where the dual narrative kicked things off to a good start, and in the beginning handful of hours, plus a little more, you get to learn about the world around you as you slowly collect your party members. Your task of helping out Ryu figure out where he's coming from and gaining his memories, paired with the missing princess, stumbles you into a political ceasefire between two nations. This isn't technically a time of peace, and we have some villains trying to stir the pot, like our freaky-eyed Captain Rosso. That mug is a villain for sure. Early on, you find out there's pollution from a past war disturbing the towns, so people find work purifying the cities. That's a cool economy/world-building type of scenario. To add to that, you have these ghosts and specters that are drawn to the pollution. And in the pollution, there are hexes. The hexes itself attack you with your own fears and negative emotions. So you have these consequences of actions of past events. That creates some good world building, but it also continues to be relevant to current events, especially later on in another one of my favorite scenes. There's also the ridiculous side of the world building. There's this quest to get a fairy drop to make a replica of a sword that broke. You gotta go to a dreamland to kill monsters that invaded the fairies. And when you're done, you get a fairy drop, a colorful lump of poop. Yes, fairy drop is fairy poop. All to make a sword. And lingering on the fairies, there's an entire fairy village that you basically organize how you want to. You set each fairy to a certain job, like being a farmer, being a lumberjack. It's a small village builder built into this game, which is a lot of fun. You have certain items that can only be found in this shop. There's a casino, there's art and music galleries that you can do. There's so many little hidden things that are basically all optional for you to not or to indulge in. But I do recommend messing around with that village. It's pretty fun. There's also a fishing minigame, but I was so sick of fishing in RPGs that I basically ignored that. But if you like that stuff, go for it. One aspect of the world building is how gods and dragons are seen in this world. The Endless is what they're called, and we'll get into more of that in spoiler territory, but this is basically the high picture of what it means in this world. Dragons and gods are able to be summoned by people to change the course of the world itself. It's a nice play on destiny and what living with gods actually means. When you summon the Endless, they are neutral. The people, the political parties, and nations are the ones that use them either for nefarious or good deeds. That's an interesting take on world building and the existence of almighty beings within the world. There are so many little interactions that are wonderful throughout this world, but obviously I can't talk about every single one. Just know that even if not every character moment lands or some blandness of the dungeon layouts, and maybe you want a little bit more from this world, The slight negatives to me are lost in the epicness of the high moments and just the lush sprite work. Seriously, sprites and animations for battle are just so good. So really, just take a moment and appreciate what is just a 2-second attack or a way an enemy bobs waiting for you to slay them. These little things, just appreciate it. Slow down, take a moment, because they happen all throughout this game. When you combine the world building, the characters, and the story, it comes down to this. A great cast of characters, a lush world with some interesting ways to navigate it. Then there is the standout points of the story, which are mainly, for me, the dark and sad moments. There's some small poignant ones with single lines of dialogue, and there's an ending that makes you think, and that's all you can really ask for right there. But most of those story stuff would be spoilers for the average viewer, and most of them I want you to be surprised by. So if you've liked this retrospective thus far, hit that like button and skip ahead to the verdict if you don't want to be spoiled. If this is your stopping point, thank you for your time, and I hope this video was worth your time. I'm going to start off with good old Urshan. Urshan ends up being inhabited by an extra-dimensional entity called Deus. Deus was summoned to this world like Ryu and Fulu, but it didn't go so well. She doesn't have a physical form, so she has to inhabit the armor, and there you go. So you have a god paired with a walking, talking armor. It's such a cool combination. She is considered part of the Endless, the ageless creatures that are basically gods. This, of course, ties into the plots of our villains that are trying to summon them later in the game, but we'll get to that in a moment. Now, I talk about some small, poignant moments. This is an example of one. 10 hours into the game for me, we get a connection to the very beginning of the game. You realize the Empire is looking for a dragon, your main character, Ryu, but the beauty is the mud dragon at the very beginning of the game that crashed Nina and Kray's ship was bugging out because Ryu fell from the sky. That, for some reason, that small little tidbit, I think is really cool. It gives a reason to the attack and ties into why Nina found Ryu and why you start off where you do. It's a nice little bow. Small little moments like this happen throughout the game, and this is one where it's subtle, but just a nice little extra information. The concept of the Endless and them not wanting to be summoned, I think, is really cool. I like this questioning of power and what shapes the world, especially coming from the dragon's perspective, which ties directly to our two dueling protagonists. Well, really, Fulu is an antagonist, but I wouldn't classify him as a villain per se. There's a lot on morality and how gods are used to everyone else's benefits when they are presented as a neutral source. It makes you think, what's the right choice for bringing in these gods and dragons? Because there's another aspect to it. Adding to the whole summoning the gods is that the presence of the Endless makes the creatures of the world more empowered and makes them actually think they're gods because of the influx of power. It's why they're more bold in going to attack people. So by bringing about the power of the gods to your nation or faction, you're also creating stronger foes in the everyday creatures. That is such a cool concept. Now, there are a lot of big story moments, but one of my favorites is at the end of Act 2. It's a very tense set of events that go on. We have the creepy blonde dude torturing children and women to find and lure out our boy Ryu. Nina is trying to explain that life is precious. Urshan was supposedly killed by this dude, but thankfully they did survive because that would be miserable to lose my favorite. And Ryu freaks out over the senseless death that's happening around him. Ryu's emotions are so intense he can't control the summoned dragon, and he unleashes that power against the captain and the robot man, and he also just obliterates everything around him. And the dragon keeps attacking some forces from the Empire. Ryu freaks out with this amazing scream. Portrait work is just, so stellar. And then you get the icing on the cake. Nina comes over and just holds on to Ryu and trying to make him stop. It's so freaking good. And all throughout this game, we get Nina narrating to us as the player and to our party, basically, in these messages on this black screen. And she says right here, watching what happened, I knew that something was not right in the world, that something was out of balance. And this ties to Ryu and Fulu, and they are truly one being separated by time. And this is kind of a hint of that. And it's such a cool concept. When Fulu was summoned, he was incomplete and the soul was split in two. And the balance was off. And so Fulu went to sleep, waiting for Ryu to come into this world hundreds of years later. And this anger is kind of linked to that. The beginning of Act 3 does this very strange choice of having this animal commit suicide. It bashes itself repeatedly against the stones to open up a passage for Fulu. It's shocking and odd. It kind of makes you feel downright depressed. And Fulu really doesn't understand why the creature would sacrifice its life for him. And then he realizes it with these words. "It would appear that regardless of my own desire, I affect the life of innocents, pulling them along with me as if caught up in some mighty river's current. Verily a river, for is it not the nature of the endless to shape the course of the world itself?" That's such a nice thread into the theme of neutrality and what happens when you summon these gods to be a part of this world. And we haven't even talked about this Yuna, this mother. When I think of Yuna, I think of Final Fantasy X. And unfortunately, sometimes my mind strays to this heinous character. In one of Fulu's segments, he wakes up in a village and he's being taken care of by a girl named Mami. And this is such a contrast to what Fulu has been experiencing so far since his waking up. Basically, every human is just hunting him. Eventually, the Imperial Army comes to find Fulu, and there's a lot of stuff that happens before this moment, but Mami holds them off from entering so Fulu can escape, and she says they'll meet again someday. And she's arrested by the Imperial Army. And this is where it gets really dark. So Yuna, the bastard, uses Mami in the cannonade, which is a large cannon that feeds off people's emotions as it sacrifices them. So since she has a strong connection to our antagonist, they prepare her for this sacrifice by torturing her with hot irons, and then they take her energy and her life force and her connection and send a blast of energy to where Fulu is. This creates more of that pollution and a hex that they think will destroy him because of their connection. This is how we find out the Empire is messing with hexes in this deeply sadistic scene. And we get one of the best total despair moments where Fulu does this crazy looking laugh, his portrait changes because he recognizes a piece of jewelry that drops right down next to him after the attack. He knows that she's dead, and he now knows how much of a barbaric act they will do to get to him. It's freaking heartbreaking, but it's so well shot in the scene and everything. But if you want to go on to a bigger heartache, and one I did not see coming at all, that's even darker in my opinion, and that is finding the missing sister. So you're making your way up this tower. There's these weird, fleshy looking organs and stuff that are crawling up the walls that are becoming barriers. So you have to go through this dungeon all throughout that. And you finally come up to this hut where Alina is, which is Nina's sister. And she's in this bed with this blanket over her covering the lower half of her body. And we find out that Yuna has created the first artificial endless. And he did that by using Alina. Actually, the name's probably Elena? Elena. Yeah, I think it's Elena, as a vessel. So the experiment has transformed her entire lower body into this massive tangle of fleshy organs that are attached and buried down into the very structure that you just climbed up to. And she can't move, and she can't die. So that entire time you're climbing up the tower and you see those gross, growth-like things infesting the walls, that's all part of Elena. It's super messed up. And we get this absolutely poignant scene where she asks Cray, who admits right there that Elena, his childhood friend, is the love of his life. And even knowing that, she still asks him to kill her because she doesn't want to live forever like this. And she knows he loved her, and that's exactly why she's asking him to do this. Cray doesn't want to do it, but he does take the dragon sword left behind and kills her. Then we have Nina's message scrawl as Cray comes out of the building. When he came back, he said nothing to us. Man, this scene is just seared into my brain. I don't think it'll ever go away. The weight of it, we've been planning on rescuing this princess, finding her, and it just goes completely wrong. And just how they set it up where there's no other characters in the room besides Cray, and he has to walk out alone and doesn't say a thing, it's just so darn good. A powerful and incredibly sad moment. There are plenty of other moments around it, but I think we should get to the ending. The final showdown with Fulu, because everything has been leading to this. We've seen Fulu's outlook on humanity dwindle and then just crash and burn. If the Endless are supposed to be neutral, then the humans doing all the experiments and killing everyone to stop him, then in his mind, they should all be killed. He says to Ryu, they are caught up in the path, nothing more. Now, Ryu's journey has seen more of the caring side of humans, Nina and her companions to be the strong central force for that. Even though we have seen some messed up stuff, he still wants to protect the humans. He had that whole freak out moment, but he still wants to go in there and protect them. And we get our first one-on-one battle. And this fight is just so fun. You've got the two opposing forces just battling each other, dragon for dragon and form for form. It's just some good time. And eventually your party members come in and save you, and you stand against Fulu and have a battle of philosophy of life when you make dialogue choices. What I like about this is Fulu will talk with an example, and then you'll get a rebuttal. So he'll say, for example, they aren't selfish, yes? And you can pick the option, maybe, or I don't know. And it will show a memory of Ryu's where a human is acting in a selfless manner. And this will go back and forth, and Ryu shows Fulu, because they're connected, that even if you have the moments of bad, you can't deny that the humans are all bad as a blanket statement, because Ryu has experience showing that they aren't all bad. And so this is how you fight his new dragon form. So we have the second battle form, which is great. I love boss battles at the end where they keep giving me more and more forms, and I'm okay with that. It's another trope, but just give it to me every single time. And when you finally beat this form, your party tries to convince Fulu about the humans. And each party member kind of says their own thing, but I really like Nina's quote. People are sometimes foolish and weak. Sometimes they do the wrong thing, but not everyone is like that. You can't give up hope for a better world. Now, Fulu was promised those things in his eyes, that, he united this empire for himself and the people still turned on him, and he saw the worser side of the humans. So he's still not convinced, and he transforms into Astral, which is a super cool looking form, all white and weird looking. And when you finally beat him, I love this freaking line of his. This is him talking about humans as a whole. Verily, a collection of contradictions, and yet they are magnificent. And when you beat this final form, the two halves of the same being, Ryu and Fulu, merge. And Ryu's hair turns golden. He is complete in one being, and he actually talks this time. This new form then chooses to cast out the gods and make them live out their lives as normal humans. Now, this is considered the good ending. There's also the bad ending, but we'll get to that in a second. Yuna is seen at the end saying, well, I can make more gods, so it's no problem. If the gods leave, he can create his artificial ones. So you don't actually fight him. What I think this choice comes down to is an all or nothing decision. In the bad ending, Fulu takes over Ryu, and the side that's more for hatred fights your party. And you actually get to control and kill all your party members, and you end up destroying all of human life on the planet because you think they are the problem. Now, people have contention with this because Fulu had experienced so much bad things, and so had Ryu with all the experimentation the Empire was doing thanks to Yuna, the torturing, and using the emotional cannon, that some people think that making the good ending seemed pointless because the bad people are still alive, like Yuna, and they will continue to still do these experiments even if the gods aren't around. But that's the point. The Endless, the gods, they're neutral. They are summoned, and they are basically puppets in a lot of ways. That's why Fulu's story is so tragic. They're kind of slave to the whims of the people around them. By denying Fulu's way of thinking, you are accepting everyone. You're saving everyone, good and the bad. That's the choice. Just like the other one is choosing to wipe out everyone in fear that people will be tempted to do evil with the power given to them, or they will find a way to make it themselves like Yuna with his experiments. But the people you loved along this journey will be gone in order to punish the bad ones you encountered. It's kind of an immense dose of tragedy, Fulu's constant despair of seeing the kingdom he built turning on him, and essentially destroying parts of the world and all the manipulation just to become a pawn to the world that keeps evolving, and even freaking Yuna escapes unscathed. Combine that with Ryu deciding to get rid of all the gods and powers, choosing death for the endless. It's a heavy ending when it seems like such an A or B option, and I love that. You accept to save everyone, even if they have the capacity for such atrocities. Woofda! And because you sacrificed the gods, technically made them turn to mortals, Ryu returns to his normal form, and I love the ending, where Nina's talking. But there's one thing I do know, and that's it will all work out in the end, somehow. And then it gets rid of the black screen and cuts to a scene where her portrait is smiling and looking at Ryu, and she says, "Right, Ryu?" And it cuts to the end of the game. And in my case, it would have been, "Right, Micah?" Nina is trying to get comfort from Ryu for their decision to kill all the gods, essentially. It's such a nice way to wrap it up. Whether it's an actual good ending, well, that's up for you to decide. We've made it to the end of this tale. A tale of resilience and despair, of positivity and pessimism, of insight into depravity of power and what happens when you can't move past it. The design of this incredible grouping of characters shines in and outside the lush, vibrant animations of the battle system. But do the random encounters, the funky camera manipulation to navigate your way through the adventure lower its worth your time status? Do the mandatory minigames get in the way of the experience that can be a bit hard to grasp some of its awesome battle mechanics and its obtuse progression in parts? Does the weight of the story get missed in the ending, or does it leave you thinking of those dark, depressing moments? Or will you be lingering on the rays of comedy sprinkled throughout thanks to the best party member, Urshin? In my eyes, this is one of the best RPGs on the PS1. And I believe it's obscured by the shadows of the greats that surround it. The third entry in the series seems to get a lot more attention, where this one stands out in many ways from that entry for good and bad reasons. What drew me to this game, the art style, will be forever one of the main reasons I recommend this game to anyone. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it only enhances what I truly love about this game. A strong cast of characters in design and the small moments they are given along the way, and truly some of the great overall story moments. It's exactly the type of package I want to see in an RPG, and I absolutely love my time with this game, even with the hiccups along the way. I think this game is absolutely worth your time. One of the best battle systems on the console, there are scenes in this game that I will forever be thinking about. That right there, the party, the battle system, the moments. That puts it among the elite. And I hope you give Breath of Fire 4 some of your time. And I hope this video was worth your time. If you've made it this far, do you think this game would be in your top 10 RPGs on the PS1, or even all time? Let me know down below. That seems like an absurd statement, but it could be. I feel like this is somebody's favorite RPG out there, and maybe they're watching right now. And if you want to set out on an adventure for a game that truly changed the trajectory of a series, well, you should watch this video right here.